The morning sun cut through the blinds of apartment 3B, casting harsh lines across the living room floor. Latisha Morgan paced back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear, voice raised to the edge of a scream. The bank had confirmed it, $600 withdrawn from the joint account. $600 meant for rent. $600 that was now gone. "Don't tell me you don't know where it is, Marcus," she shouted, her knuckles white from gripping the phone. "I saw the withdrawal. Your name's all over it." On the other end, Marcus Taylor's voice was distant, laced with irritation. "You always want to blame me for everything. Maybe you should check your own spending." Latisha let out a bitter laugh. "I haven't touched that account in weeks. It's supposed to be for rent and bills, not your damn nights out." The argument escalated. Voices rose, accusations flew. Latisha's daughter, Chloe, peeked her head out from her bedroom, eyes wide with fear. She had seen her mother and father fight before, but this time it felt different. This time it felt final. Marcus hung up first, the call ending with a sharp beep. Latisha hurled the phone onto the couch, breathing hard, eyes blazing with fury. "Broke ass," she muttered under her breath. She glanced over at Chloe and forced a smile, but the rage simmered beneath her expression. "It's all right, baby. Mommy's just dealing with some grown-up stuff." Chloe nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest. She knew better than to ask questions. Outside, the city of Detroit rumbled with its usual noise. Sirens in the distance, buses hissing at the curb, neighbors shouting greetings across the street. But inside apartment 3B, the silence was thick, heavy with unspoken threats and lingering mistrust. Latisha glanced back at her phone, the screen still glowing with Marcus's name. She had half a mind to call him back, to rip into him again, but she stopped herself. "He ain't worth it," she muttered, grabbing her purse and keys. "I'm handling this my way." As she locked the apartment door behind her, she didn't realize it would be the last time she'd do so. Latisha made her way down the cracked steps of the building, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete. The street was alive with activity, cars honking, kids playing basketball in the distance, the distant wail of a siren echoing from the next block. Her mind was buzzing with thoughts, her fists clenched tight around her purse strap. She stopped at the corner store, its neon sign flickering, as if it might go out at any moment. Inside, the clerk nodded in her direction, familiar with her face but never her story. Latisha grabbed a bottle of water and stood in line behind a pair of teenagers arguing over which brand of chips to buy. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, Marcus again. She swiped it off, stuffing the device back into her purse. He always had something to say after the fact, never in the moment. That was Marcus, all bark and no bite. She paid for her water and stepped back into the sunlight, blinking against the sudden glare. On the walk back, she passed her neighbor, Mrs. Klein, an elderly woman who spent most of her days watching the world pass by from her porch. "Everything all right, sweetie?" Mrs. Klein asked, her voice raspy with age and cigarettes. Latisha forced a smile. "Just fine, Mrs. Klein. Just handling some business." The old woman nodded knowingly, her gaze lingering as Latisha continued down the block. "You take care now," she called after her. Latisha raised her hand in acknowledgement, her mind already a mile away. When she reached her building, she paused at the entrance, her eyes scanning the street as if expecting someone. She shook her head and stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind her. She climbed the steps slowly, her hand trailing along the chipped paint of the railing. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if something unseen was dragging her back. Inside her apartment, she set the water bottle on the counter and collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. Chloe wandered out of her bedroom, her stuffed rabbit still in her grip. "Mommy." Latisha smiled, softer this time. "Hey baby, you hungry?" Chloe nodded, and Latisha forced herself off the couch, moving to the kitchen to rummage through the cabinets. She found a can of soup and set it on the counter. As she heated it on the stove, her mind wandered back to the account, to the money that was missing, to Marcus and his excuses. Her grip tightened around the spoon she was stirring with. The phone buzzed again on the counter. Latisha ignored it. There were things that needed to be handled, and she was going to handle them, with or without Marcus. The Detroit skyline loomed gray and uninviting as Detective Jenna Monroe navigated her unmarked cruiser through the rain-slicked streets. Her radio crackled with static before dispatch came through. "We got a 10 to 54 at 3B Grandview Apartments. Woman found dead in her unit. Neighbors reported a smell." Jenna sighed, flicking her turn signal. Another day, another tragedy. She'd been on the force for nearly 12 years, and the east side of Detroit never ran out of heartbreak. She pulled up to the building, its brick exterior crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. Yellow police tape stretched across the entrance, flapping in the wind. The smell hit her as she approached the building, thick, metallic, and unmistakable. Death had its own odor, and it clung to the walls like a memory that refused to fade. Inside, the hallway was dimly lit, paint peeling from the walls, the faint sound of a TV playing somewhere behind closed doors. A uniformed officer stood outside apartment 3B, his face pale and expression taut. He nodded at her, lifting the tape for her to pass under. "Anyone been inside?" Jenna asked, slipping on a pair of gloves. "Just patrol. Scene's untouched," he replied. Jenna stepped through the door, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The living room was cluttered but mostly intact, dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered across the floor, a blanket half-draped over the couch. But it was the kitchen where everything stopped. Latisha Morgan lay crumpled on the linoleum floor, her eyes open but unseeing, mouth slightly parted as if her final breath had been cut short. Blood pooled beneath her head, dark and sticky, seeping into the cracks of the floor. Detective Monroe knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb anything. The small, two-bedroom apartment on Concord Street had seen its share of struggles. Scuffed linoleum floors, chipped paint on the windowsills, and a front door that stuck during the winter months. But to Latisha Morgan it was home. It was where she raised her daughter Chloe, where she hosted birthday parties on a shoestring budget, and where she clung to her dreams despite the walls closing in. Latisha worked 2 jobs, day shifts at the hair salon on Jefferson and late nights cleaning offices downtown. She dreamed of opening her own salon one day, a place with bright windows and lush plants where women from the neighborhood could feel beautiful and important. She even had a name picked out, Latisha's Touch. It was written in looping cursive on the vision board she kept taped to the back of her closet door, right next to Chloe's school drawings and pictures of family gatherings. Despite her ambitions, money was always tight. Every month was a struggle to balance rent, utilities, and groceries. Marcus helped when he could, but his contributions were sporadic, sometimes generous, sometimes non-existent. It depended on whether he was working that month, or if he'd found himself back at Dante's auto shop, hustling side gigs for cash. Dante Mills was the neighborhood's unofficial banker. He lent out money when banks wouldn't, and his interest rates were as steep as his handshake was firm. Marcus had known Dante since high school. They played ball together before life took its turns. Dante went into business, both legal and not, and Marcus spiraled in and out of jobs, scraping by. But when things got tough, it was always Dante who floated Marcus a couple of $100s to tide him over, no questions asked. But money from Dante came with strings. The kind that tangled and knotted, pulling people under if they couldn't pay. Latisha hated it. She knew Marcus borrowed from him occasionally, but every time she brought it up, it ended in an argument. "I gotta do what I gotta do," Marcus would say, his voice tinged with desperation. "A man's gotta provide." But Latisha knew the truth. Dante's money was a noose around their necks, and every borrowed dollar tightened it. Still, life went on. They celebrated Chloe's 7th birthday in the small kitchen with store-bought cake and homemade decorations. Latisha had strung up pink streamers, and Chloe wore a plastic tiara she refused to take off, even when she blew out the candles. Marcus had come by with a stuffed bear nearly as big as she was. For a moment, things felt normal, happy even. Latisha snapped pictures with her phone, capturing Chloe's gap-toothed smile and Marcus's rare grin. But beneath it all was the strain, unspoken but heavy. And then there was Shirley Morgan. Latisha's mother was a permanent fixture in their lives. She lived 2 blocks down in the duplex she'd rented for over 20 years. A pillar of the community, Shirley was known for her sharp tongue and generous heart. She watched Chloe when Latisha worked late shifts, making sure the girl was fed and in bed by 9. But Shirley had her own demons. Medical bills that piled up on her kitchen table, eviction notices that came more frequently, and payday loans that never seemed to get smaller. Latisha visited every Sunday for dinner. Shirley would make cornbread and greens, and they'd sit at the small, wobbly table talking about work, life, and how they were going to make it through another week. Sometimes Marcus would join if he wasn't hustling for work. Those Sundays were sacred, an oasis in the chaos of survival. But as the bills stacked higher, the cracks began to show. Latisha started noticing little things, a 20 missing from her purse, a phone call from the bank about insufficient funds. She confronted Marcus first, the words spilling out before she could stop them. He denied it, of course, swore he didn't touch the account. Maybe you should ask your mama, he spat one night after too many drinks. She's the one always asking for money. Latisha's heart clenched. Shirley would never, would she? But the seed was planted. She started paying closer attention. One Sunday afternoon, she watched as Shirley's hands shook pouring iced tea, her eyes a little too wide when Latisha mentioned the bank withdrawals. You know I'd never touch your money, baby, Shirley had said, but her voice wavered. Doubt crept in like rot, festering and growing. Latisha found herself checking her account balance every morning, eyeing every transaction with suspicion. And then one Friday afternoon, the final blow, $600 gone. Rent money. Money she didn't have and couldn't replace. Her heart pounded as she stared at the screen, disbelief turning to rage. The argument with Marcus was explosive. Latisha screamed into the phone, accusations flying, her voice cracking with desperation. But he held his ground, insisted he didn't take it. I'm telling you it wasn't me, he shouted back. Why don't you look a little closer to home? Latisha hung up on him, hands shaking, eyes burning. She thought about her mother, her hands trembling as she poured tea, the stack of envelopes piled on her table. And she knew. She didn't want to believe it, but she knew. That Sunday, she walked to Shirley's house, fists clenched, heart heavy. The walk felt longer than it ever had, each step dragging her closer to a confrontation she never wanted. But she needed answers. Rent was due in 2 days, and she had nothing left. She was done living with secrets, done pretending everything was fine. Shirley answered the door, her eyes tired and rimmed with red. Latisha, baby, I wasn't expecting you today. Latisha stepped inside, her jaw clenched. We need to talk. The door clicked shut behind them, and the storm that had been building for weeks finally broke. Blunt force trauma to the head, she murmured to herself, eyes scanning the scene. Her hands were splayed out, fingers bent awkwardly, as if she'd tried to break her fall. But there was more, red marks around her neck, faint but distinct. Strangled too, she added. Monroe stood, scanning the room. A photo on the wall caught her attention. Latisha and a young girl, maybe 6 or 7, both smiling, their eyes bright with hope. The girl clutched a stuffed rabbit, its ear half torn, the kind of detail a detective notices. Where's the kid? She asked, turning to the officer at the door. Her grandmother picked her up yesterday, neighbor said. They were going to a family thing. Jenna made a mental note to follow up. The grandmother would have to be questioned. Her eyes flickered back to the blood on the floor, the pale stillness of Latisha's face. Something's off here, she whispered, almost to herself. This wasn't random. Monroe took one last look around the kitchen before nodding to the forensics team. Bag everything. Door handles, the counters, I want it all dusted. She paused at the entrance, the rain beginning to fall harder outside. And get me the security footage from the street cameras. I want to know who came and went from this building in the last 48 hours. As she stepped back out into the hallway, the officer lowered the tape behind her. The rain had turned to a steady downpour, washing away the morning's grime, but not the sense of unease that had settled in Monroe's bones. I'll be back, she promised, already planning her next move. There were always more secrets. You just had to know where to look. Detective Jenna Monroe sat in the back corner of the precinct's briefing room, her notepad open to a fresh page. Rain pattered against the windows, drawing long shadows across the gray walls. Photos of Latisha Morgan's apartment were pinned to the board, shots of the living room, the kitchen, the blood pooling beneath her head. Next to them, a photo of Latisha herself, smiling and alive, stood as a stark reminder of the life now snuffed out. We need to talk to Marcus Taylor, Jenna said, addressing the small team gathered around. He's the baby's father, joint account holder. We already know there was money missing from the rent fund. Officer Kim nodded, scribbling notes. We got a last known address on him? Still listed at his mother's place on East Jefferson, Jenna replied. Pay him a visit. If he's not there, check the bars. By noon, Jenna found herself standing on the warped steps of a rundown duplex, its paint peeling like sunburned skin. She knocked hard, the sound echoing through the thin walls. A moment later, the door creaked open and a woman with tired eyes and a cigarette dangling from her lips stared back. You Marcus's mom? Jenna asked, flashing her badge. The woman blew out a plume of smoke and nodded. He ain't here. When's the last time you saw him? Few days back. Came by to pick up some of his stuff. She leaned against the doorframe, unbothered by Jenna's presence. He in trouble again? We just need to ask him some questions. Well, I don't know where he is, the woman replied, flicking ash onto the step. Maybe try the rusted nail. He goes there when he needs to get his head straight. Jenna made a note. Thanks. The rusted nail was a dimly lit bar on the edge of the neighborhood, its sign flickering like it might give out any moment. The stench of stale beer and cigarette smoke clung to everything like a second skin. Jenna pushed through the door, scanning the tables. In the far corner, Marcus sat hunched over a drink, his eyes red-rimmed and sunken. She approached, her heels tapping against the linoleum. Marcus Taylor? He looked up, eyes narrowing. Who's asking? Detective Monroe. Need to ask you a few questions about Latisha. His jaw clenched, and his fingers tightened around the glass. I already told y'all, I ain't seen her. That's funny, Jenna replied coolly. Because she was found dead in her apartment yesterday. Marcus's eyes flickered, the bravado draining from his face. What? You heard me. We know about the missing money too. $600 from the joint account. Want to tell me about that? Marcus rubbed his eyes, shaking his head. I didn't touch that money. I swear to God. I ain't even been near her place in weeks. Jenna pulled out her notepad. And where were you 2 nights ago? He hesitated, gaze dropping to the floor. I was with a friend. Name? Marcus swallowed hard. Dante Mills. We were at his place, watching the game. Jenna nodded, scribbling down the name. We'll be checking that. And Marcus? Don't go anywhere. As she left the rusted nail, Jenna's instincts kicked in. Marcus was scared, that much was clear. But scared of what, or who? That was the next step. Back at the precinct, Detective Monroe gathered her notes, laying out the pieces that she had so far. A dead woman, $600 missing, and a scared man with a shaky alibi. She knew better than to trust first impressions. Marcus was hiding something, she could feel it. But whether it was murder or just desperation, that remained to be seen. Jenna moved over to the whiteboard in the corner of the room, where photos and evidence were pinned up haphazardly. Latisha's smiling face from her driver's license stared back at her. What happened to you? Jenna whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. A knock at the door pulled her back. Officer Kim stepped in, a folder in her hands. Got the preliminary forensics back, she said, handing it over. No forced entry, and the neighbors didn't hear a damn thing. Whoever did this knew how to be quiet. Or Latisha let them in, Jenna replied, flipping through the report. She paused when she reached the autopsy summary. Strangulation marks were older than the head wound, she noted aloud. She was choked first, then finished off. Crime of passion? Kim suggested, crossing her arms. Could be, Jenna nodded. But it takes a lot of rage to go from strangling someone to bashing their head in. We need more. Officer Kim hesitated, then added, There's one more thing. Marcus's alibi checks out. I called Dante Mills. He swears Marcus was with him the whole night. They were watching the game. Jenna narrowed her eyes. And you believe him? Mills isn't the most reliable source, but he was pretty firm. Said they were drinking and playing cards too. Jenna nodded, scribbling notes. We'll cross-check it, but I want to talk to him myself. Kim lingered in the doorway. You think Marcus did it? Jenna stared at the board, her gaze locked on Latisha's face. I think Marcus knows more than he's saying. And I'm going to find out exactly what that is. She pulled on her coat, grabbed her notepad, and gestured for Kim to follow. Come on. We're paying Dante Mills a visit. Let's see if his story holds water when he's looking me in the eye. Kim nodded, grabbing her keys. Maybe we'll finally get some straight answers. As they headed out, the rain still poured down in heavy sheets, washing away the grime from the streets, but leaving behind the secrets that always seemed to fester in the cracks. Jenna knew from experience that nothing stayed hidden forever, not in Detroit, and definitely not on her watch. Jenna's heels clicked against the linoleum floors of the precinct, the echo fading as she entered the interrogation room. Marcus was already inside, hands clasped together, eyes cast downward. He looked up when she stepped in, eyes bloodshot but defiant. His hands trembled slightly, but he masked it with crossed arms and a sharp glare. You know why you're here, Jenna began, setting her notepad on the metal table. Her eyes stayed locked on his, unblinking. Your alibi checks out, but I still think you know more than you're letting on. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed, but his eyes betrayed him, darting left, then right, settling finally on the corner of the room. I already told you. I ain't seen her. We broke up months ago. Funny, Jenna said, flipping open her notepad. Because your name is still on that joint account, and $600 went missing the day before Latisha died. Marcus's jaw tightened, muscles clenching and releasing like the ticking of a clock. I didn't touch that money. Jenna leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Then who did? The silence stretched thin between them, like a wire ready to snap. Marcus hesitated, his eyes flickering to the one-way mirror, then back to Jenna. His voice softened, just above a whisper. You should be asking her mama, he whispered back. Shirley been looking for money ever since she got that eviction notice. Jenna raised an eyebrow, her pen freezing mid-scribble. Shirley Morgan? Yeah, Marcus nodded, leaning forward, voice lowering as if the walls themselves might be listening. She was at Latisha's place last week, screaming about money. Said if she didn't get it, she was going to lose the house. Jenna jotted down notes, her mind racing. You're saying Latisha's mother might have had something to do with the money going missing? Marcus shrugged, leaning back again. I ain't saying nothing. Just think you should check it out. Jenna closed her notepad and stood up. Oh, I will. As she left the room, she dialed Officer Kim. I need you to pull up everything on Shirley Morgan, evictions, credit problems, anything financial. And check if she was anywhere near Latisha's apartment the day she died. On it, Kim replied. Jenna hung up, her heels clicking in time with her thoughts. If Shirley was in financial trouble, that could be motive. And if she was desperate enough, maybe that desperation had turned to violence. The web was unraveling. All Jenna had to do now was pull the right thread. 2 hours later, Kim sent a message to her phone. Got something. Shirley Morgan applied for a payday loan the same day Latisha's money went missing. And get this, she listed Latisha's address as her own. Jenna's brow furrowed as she read the message. She's living off Latisha's name, she murmured to herself. That kind of desperation wasn't just financial, it was personal. The threads were coming together, and Jenna could almost see the full picture, just out of reach. The sky hung low and heavy over Detroit as Jenna Monroe pulled up to the worn-out duplex on East Jefferson. Rain drizzled down in thin sheets, blurring the edges of the world like a half-forgotten memory. She cut the engine and stepped out, slamming the car door behind her. It was time to get answers. Her footsteps echoed on the cracked pavement as she approached the front door. The neighborhood was silent, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a chained dog. Jenna's hand hovered over her hip, brushing the edge of her holster, a reflex she couldn't shake, even after 12 years on the force. She knocked firmly, the sound reverberating through the thin walls of the duplex. The door creaked open after a long pause, revealing Shirley Morgan's gaunt face, eyes red-rimmed and wary. Detective, she croaked, her voice frayed from sleepless nights. I ain't done nothing, . Jenna raised an eyebrow, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of old cigarettes and desperation. Shirley shuffled behind her, closing the door with a reluctant push. You mind if I sit? Jenna asked, already lowering herself onto the faded sofa. Shirley watched her with tired eyes, nodding slowly. I got nothing to hide. Good, Jenna replied, flipping open her notepad. Because I want to talk about that $600. Shirley's eyes flickered, her hands clenching and unclenching nervously. I don't know nothing about that. That's strange, Jenna continued, her voice smooth and steady. Because the loan company you borrowed from says you used Latisha's address and her name on your application. Shirley's breath caught in her throat. That don't mean nothing. I needed a place for the mail. Jenna leaned forward, her gaze sharpening. And when she wouldn't give you the money, you got desperate. You went back, didn't you? Shirley shook her head furiously. No, I swear I didn't go back. Jenna paused, studying her face, then reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. Found this in your trash. It's got her name on it and your fingerprints. Shirley's hands flew to her mouth, eyes widening. I didn't mean to hurt her. She wouldn't listen. I just wanted to make her understand. But she didn't, did she? Jenna pressed, her voice softening. You grabbed her, things got out of hand. Tears streamed down Shirley's face, her shoulders sagging under the weight of her confession. I just wanted the money, for rent, for the lights. I didn't mean. Jenna closed her notepad, her eyes steady and unyielding. I'm going to need you to come with me, Shirley. The older woman nodded, her breath shuddering with every inhale. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. Jenna rose, guiding her to the door as the rain continued its relentless patter against the windows. Outside, the lights of the cruiser flashed red and blue, illuminating the night with fractured bursts of color. Shirley climbed into the back seat without resistance, her eyes staring blankly ahead. Jenna stood in the rain for a moment longer, the water soaking through her coat, dripping from her fingertips. Another tragedy born from desperation, another life torn apart. She sighed, pulling her coat tighter before stepping into the cruiser, shutting the door on the night and the echoes of what desperation had wrought. As they drove back to the precinct, Jenna's mind wandered through the scattered details: eviction notices, loan applications, the missing $600. The threads of desperation had tangled Shirley up until there was no escape. Jenna's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Poverty wasn't just a circumstance, it was a trap. You think she planned it? Officer Kim asked from the passenger seat, breaking the silence. Jenna's eyes remained on the road. No, I think she just saw an opportunity, and it went too far. Kim nodded, her gaze out the window. People do crazy things when they're desperate. Jenna sighed. Yeah, and most times nobody sees it coming. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Curtains twitched as she walked past, shadows shifting behind cracked blinds. She reached the front steps and knocked firmly. The door creaked open after a long pause, revealing Shirley Morgan's gaunt face, eyes red-rimmed and wary. "Detective," Shirley croaked, her voice frayed from sleepless nights. "I ain't done nothin', . Jenna raised an eyebrow, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of old cigarettes and desperation. Shirley shuffled behind her, closing the door with a reluctant push. "You mind if I sit?" Jenna asked, already lowering herself onto the faded sofa. Shirley watched her with tired eyes, nodding slowly. "I got nothing to hide." "Good," Jenna replied, flipping open her notepad. "Because I want to talk about that $600. Shirley's eyes flickered, her hands clenching and unclenching nervously. I don't know nothing about that." "That's strange," Jenna continued, her voice smooth and steady. "Because the loan company you borrowed from says you used Latisha's address and her name on your application." Shirley's breath caught in her throat. "That don't mean nothing. I needed a place for the mail." Jenna leaned forward, her gaze sharpening. "And when she wouldn't give you the money, you got desperate. You went back, didn't you?" Shirley shook her head furiously. "No, I swear I didn't go back." Jenna paused, studying her face, then reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. "Found this in your trash. It's got her name on it and your fingerprints." Shirley's hands flew to her mouth, eyes widening. I didn't mean to hurt her. She wouldn't listen. I just wanted to make her understand." "But she didn't, did she?" Jenna pressed, her voice softening. "You grabbed her, things got out of hand." Tears streamed down Shirley's face, her shoulders sagging under the weight of her confession. "I just wanted the money, for rent, for the lights. I didn't mean." Jenna closed her notepad, her eyes steady and unyielding. "I'm going to need you to come with me, Shirley." The older woman nodded, her breath shuddering with every inhale. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't know what else to do." Jenna rose, guiding her to the door as the rain continued its relentless patter against the windows. Outside, the lights of the cruiser flashed red and blue, illuminating the night with fractured bursts of color. Shirley climbed into the back seat without resistance, her eyes staring blankly ahead. Jenna stood in the rain for a moment longer, the water soaking through her coat, dripping from her fingertips. Another tragedy born from desperation, another life torn apart. She sighed, pulling her coat tighter before stepping into the cruiser, shutting the door on the night and the echoes of what desperation had wrought. The rain had stopped by the time Jenna Monroe left the precinct. Gray clouds hung over the city like ghosts, lingering reminders of the past few days. She stood on the steps of the building, her eyes following the line of damp pavement that stretched out before her. The case was closed. Shirley Morgan had been processed, her confession signed and sealed. Latisha's death had been ruled a homicide, but not the kind anyone would write headlines about. It was quiet, personal, a tragedy woven from desperation and bad decisions. Jenna watched as people passed by, heads down against the drizzle that still dripped from the rooftops. In her pocket, she held the folded photograph of Latisha and Chloe, the one she had found on the refrigerator door in that cramped apartment. Chloe's eyes had sparkled with the kind of hope that was hard to find in Detroit. Now she would grow up with that hope shadowed by loss. Officer Kim stepped out behind her, nodding as she joined Jenna on the steps. "Hell of a case," she murmured. Jenna nodded. Desperation does strange things to people. Kim lit a cigarette, the smoke curling up into the damp air. "You think she really meant to kill her?" Jenna paused, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I think she wanted money. I think she wanted control. But I don't think she wanted her dead." She exhaled long and slow. "But sometimes desperation doesn't care what you want." They stood in silence for a long moment, the city stretching out before them in jagged lines and broken promises. Jenna folded the photograph back into her pocket. "Come on," she said finally. "There's always another case." They walked back into the precinct, the door clicking shut behind them, sealing away the chill of the outside world. But for Jenna, the shadows of desperation lingered, whispering the same reminder they always did, that survival sometimes came at a cost too high to bear.